If you're interested in what I look like in real life and want to learn more about me, then follow my Instagram page at Joe the Insomniak. I'd like to begin by describing myself, because I believe it's relevant to the story. I have to assume that I'm not the average author here. I'm 25, male, a bit above the average height. I've been doing sports 5 to 6 times a week since I've graduated high school. Gym, running, CrossFit, squash, swimming, as well as any sport that my friends decided to start playing. My favourite hobbies are mountaineering, hiking, and bouldering. I've just recently purchased a new pair of high altitude mountaineering boots because it's near the end of summer season. They're on sale. The plan is to wear them in the Alps next summer on a few ascents. I live in a European capital, one that's surrounded by nature with many trails and opportunities for hiking. I decided to break in my boots last Saturday, more specifically because it would have been my granddad's birthday. He also loved to hike before he died. These boots are overkill for these woods, but I needed to try them. I selected a nice route that's around 25 kilometers and set off at about 9 in the morning. It's rained just the day before, so I expected a fair amount of mud and not as many people, because a lot are scared off by the weather. Since the sun is excruciatingly hot, it's a nice change of temperature, especially between trees and such. In the not so distant past, my dog would have definitely joined me on this hike, but she's turning 14 this year and doesn't enjoy long walks anymore. My girlfriend had to do something for work on short notice, so I knew from that moment I'd be alone. The first half of the hike was perfect. The altitude difference along the trail was minimal. I barely broke a sweat and I misjudged how many people would be out due to the storm before. I met about 7 people during the first 3 hours. Most of them were cross-country runners. It's worth mentioning that I wasn't walking quick. I stepped on many occasions upon different animals' trails and would stop to look. Between 12 and 1, the path ran into a road where cars could go. This road is asphalt, but deep in the forest and can only be used to reach certain landmarks that are also in the forest. Cars are rare here. My trail required me to take this road for a few hundred meters. As I'm walking up the road, I hear a car approach from behind me. It went past, not quick or slow. It's an older green SUV with a fresh registration plate. Probably an import. I thought nothing of it. Then I heard it come back, driving past me for the second time, now very slow. I could clearly see 2 men sitting in the front seats wearing a baseball cap, each, and sunglasses. I assumed they were gamekeepers, even though the cars have a crest on the hood and both the doors. As I hike a fair amount, I knew these things. I see them around quite a bit. They would also not be driving a car like this. They have jeeps, which are more suitable for here. Still, I felt no discomfort and again thought nothing of it. Then, my trail left the asphalt road and began snaking in the woods again. I walked ahead, gazing at trees and whatnot. Then I suddenly felt the strange sensation that somebody or something is behind me. An engine sound was becoming more and more clear as well. At this point, the trail was quite narrow, but if, for whatever reason, You want to drive a car on it. You could not. Now I turn around. The SUV is right in my face. It's an arm's length away from me, and it just stopped as I had. I look at the driver, who is staring back at me. I calmly said, "What's wrong? Shall I let you go?" In a polite tone as the windows rolled down. He did not speak though. Instead, began to slowly reverse. Now, I'm uncomfortable. He soon disappears behind a curve. Now I was very scared. I also noticed that he was alone in the car, not like before. I listened intently, still standing, since I wasn't sure what was going on. By this point, I was not scared, but there was a faint feeling of unease in the air, and bad thoughts began gathering in the back of my mind. I now heard the car. It was stopping just behind the curve. I heard the door open and shut, but nothing from that point on. I turned around and began walking towards my destination at a much faster pace than before. Now I was a bit scared. I didn't understand why he didn't answer. I didn't get why he reversed without saying a single word. I wasn't sure what to make of it, but I had no desire to ask him again why, or to see him for that matter. I had just walked out of there with these unpleasant thoughts, slightly out of sight to them. I'd been drinking a lot of water, so I had to pee. I saw a perfect spot, a narrow path off the trail that led quite clearly to a little hunting tower. I walked over to the tower, put my bag down, and began peeing. I was also interested in checking Google Maps to see where I was, but since there is no signal, I decided to check the map. I also had a sip of water. I had been camping there for a good few minutes before I decided to look back at the trail. Now right before I get to the main trail, I thought to myself how extremely quiet it was. No wind, no noise of any kind. Absolutely nothing. This made me realize just a moment later how alone I was. Except for the man who was standing maybe 50 meters away from me on the trail, in the direction I was heading. I only saw this as soon as I stepped back onto the trail. Now the moment that I looked at him, I was instantly chilled to the bone. He was dressed in tactical clothing, with a baseball cap on his head. The only reason he was standing still, I believe, was a moment of surprise that I appeared when I did, and that he didn't expect me to appear from there. At this point, I was fully and utterly alarmed. In his hand, he was holding a hunting rifle that had a scope on it. Now, had this happened without the incident with the SUV, I would have probably kept on walking, thinking he's a hunter. However, in light of the strange encounter, from which the second man was missing, something in me snapped immediately. In hindsight, I now know that it's illegal to hunt here. I figured in the matter of 2 seconds that I was going to sprint through the woods until exhaustion, towards and past the tower, as it seemed natural to do at the time. If there was no malicious intent on this man's behalf, or the other, he'll just think I'm an idiot and forget about me. If correct, this is the best decision I have ever made in my life. And for God's sake, he began running towards me, adrenaline blossoming within me. I began sprinting away. I sprinted past the tower deep to the bushes, not sparing my legs as I was wearing shorts and a thermal jumper. I crashed through the branches, small trees, slipping on several occasions. I really did sprint until I was out due to exhaustion. It's been several kilometers now. I even come across some smaller trails but didn't even bother to check them. My pulse was 1,000,000,000 times a minute. I began checking my phone for a signal, but there's nothing. I was really angry at myself for not memorizing the license plate. I began to power walk, but still off the trail straight ahead, in a direction that I knew would sooner or later lead me to the wood's end. When my phone got a signal, I began to immediately relay the story to different people, saying I was overreacting and that I shouldn't have went there alone. Finally, I reached a trail that led directly to a cute little town that borders this rather large forest. It felt like an eternity, but I walked the last kilometre to the main square, took off my jumper, putting it in my bag. At least I looked a little different now. From far away, I waited for a bus that took me to my car, anxiously. After the bus ride, during which I studied each car on the road, I walked back to my car, get in, and drove home. I now called the gamekeeper's forest office. I inquire about what happened and if they've had any cars in the service. Like the ones I've come across, they do not. The gamekeepers also don't work in pairs. 99% are alone. I told them this and they took me very seriously. I left the office and never went back to that place again. So back in 2015, I had the choice of getting a dog or a smartphone. I'd never had a dog in my life, or a decent smartphone coming to think of it. I'd been saving up for a while regardless, but decided to side with getting a dog. My dad knew a fella who had a couple of border collies that recently had a litter, so we drove out, and the dude gave me the last puppy. Enter Bailey. A couple of weeks after he got his shot, I started walking him. My parents figured I was going to be hanging out at some local park with my new pup, so I could get him to socialise, but no. I chose instead to take him around the perimeter of a nearby farm, to keep the farm dog in him. I've been sneaking out to this farm for years now. The farmer was my old friend. My uncle grew up working with him, so I knew if I was ever caught, I could just drop their name. On either side of the farm was some thick woodland, which nobody ever given me any reason to be wary of. Honestly, they probably should have though. So it's a sunny afternoon. It's been pouring down all week. Bailey was itching for a good walk. I take him to the farm as usual. We start making our way around the woods from east side to west of the farm. Everything's quiet. But Bailey, she keeps on darting away to explore more. He's a puppy. It's what they do, of course. I've been calling his name for some time now, all the way around the field. We're about halfway past the woods. I could see the roof of the farmhouse over the next hill. Bailey's been pulling constantly, going through the bushes along the way. As we're here, I suddenly hear a man calling my dog by his name. Like this dude I don't know is calling my dog by name. I knew it wasn't the farmer because I'd met him at family events like barbecues, etc. So I knew what his voice sounded like. I go completely silent, but the guy keeps on calling my dog. It seems like he's deep into the woods, moving perhaps. He's calling my dog with an excited tone in his voice, which creeps me out. Bailey, meanwhile, is completely ignoring the guy. Now I'm like a tiny girl. I'm only 18. The most experiences I have in combat is a month of taekwondo when I'm 11. I don't have a mobile phone. If that guy works out where I am, I'm screwed. And if Bailey decides to go after him, I'm especially screwed. I'm not letting any psycho get his hands on my puppy. I can either run to the farm, which isn't far away, or back down through the fields towards my home. I pick up my dog, begin sprinting across an open field. Behind me, I hear someone emerge from the woods, but I'm already over the fence, sprinting back home with my puppy under my arm. I get home and tell my mum. She brushes it off as a drunk guy. Great. A few weeks later, I'm at my uncle's house, and the farmer walks in. I told my uncle what happened, so he brings this up. The farmer asks exactly which woods I've been close to, and that some of his clothes had gone missing around that area. He put it down to strong winds, but now he's not sure. I take him and my uncle to the exact spot the next day, and all three of us go in and find a completely wrecked campsite. There's no clothes or anything, but the tent has collapsed on itself. There's no fire, no empty gas canister that you'd use, no anything. We reported it to the police, but as always, nothing ever comes of it. Except that I got a phone not long after that. The thing that scares me most is how that he was calling my dog by its name, knowing that I wouldn't come, but an innocent puppy might and lure me into danger. I was somewhere in the 11 to 10 range. I'm now 25, and my family and I were camping in North Conway, NH. My parents were cooking breakfast, and I went to play in the woods nearby. All of a sudden, this little boy around my age seems to appear out of nowhere from the woods. But being young, I just assumed he was camping nearby. We talked. He told me about how him and his parents are out there a lot, and they have a lot of stuff at their campsites. He went on to tell me about how fun it was, all the things we could do there. I said to him, "What's the fun stuff you're talking about?" He said his dad kept a lot of beer and a lot of guns. He then inquired if I'd like to come and see this with his dad. Being young and stupid, I initially said yes. Now, I follow him down the path. My mother catches a glimpse of me walking away with this strange boy and jogs towards us yelling. I told her that I was going with the kid to see his dad's guns. She yanks me away immediately. Now it seems pretty innocent, if left there, but as we're going out that day, we took the road that ran parallel and overlooked most of the campground. Now as I'm looking over there was absolutely nothing where that dog trail led to. It was barely a trail, and went straight into a thickly wooded area, clearly not at all part of the camping grounds. Who knows what lies up there? I'm just glad that I never found out for myself.